It is Wednesday. It is the last Wednesday in May before we get to Memorial Day. I am speaking to everybody today from Ojai, which is the indigenous region of the Chumash. And I'm wearing a navy shirt that says "Give a Damn" in pink. That's what I'm wearing today to welcome my amazing young guest, Max Silverman. I am so excited, guys, to Max. He's a new friend, and but with a very, very old history to our family. There you are. Good
Hello.
morning.
Good
Hello.
morning.
How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I assume you're in Evanston, yes, or in
In
Chicago?
Chicago, yeah.
In Chicago. Good, good. And I'm here in Ojai, and I have been doing something new for folks who are on Instagram who are visually impaired and describing what I look like. So I'm a Caucasian woman.
Oh,
I'm wearing pink glasses. I've got brown eyes, brown hair, and I'm wearing a navy blue shirt that says in pink stitching, "Give a damn." And I've got a white wall behind me with some pictures of my family and some other little, talisman like that. How about yourself?
yeah. I'm Caucasian. I'm wearing a blue shirt that says TBH, Teens Be Heard on it. And there is a gray wall behind me that I have some playbills and show programs up there. And I have a big head of curly hair that I need to schedule a haircut for.
Nice, nice. Well, you could just let it grow and then you'll be like, what's this bucket in hair? Why am I
Oh,
spacing
yes.
out? Burger. You'll look like
Yes.
Burger in hair. And
The
what?
nice,
Why not
luscious
walk into the
lock.
Boston Conservatory looking like Burger, right?
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go.
So congratulations, you're off to BC
Thank
in the
you.
fall. That's a big
Yes.
deal. That's
Yes.
very exciting.
Very
Um,
excited.
but even though this is completely off topic, what's your favorite musical?
Ooh, that's a hard one. You know, it's ironic because I'm a dancer first, but the musical that's my favorite actually has no dancing. It's Come From Away.
Mhm.
It just I sat in the audience and just cried through the whole thing. It was so amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I love that you're a dancer. I was a dancer many, many moons ago. I still dance, but not the way I used to. And my mom was a dancer. That's how I, you know, learned my love of dance and so forth. And so I just want to introduce the whole audience to even how we know each other and the random circumstance
Yes.
that introduced us to each other, which is just so much fun. I don't remember how our moms met, but, or put it this way, my mom and your
My
grandmother.
grandma.
I don't remember how they met. But I do have very, very fond memories of going to your grandparents' house when your mom and your aunt and uncle we were all young, we were all in elementary school and stuff like that, and having so much fun. And then taking this amazing road trip. We had two camper vans
Oh my
and
gosh.
we caravaned down to Florida. And I just have these fabulous memories of being in Florida with your family. And then the next thing I knew, you guys, your mom and sister and uncle, or your aunt and uncle moved to New York.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden there was the Sally Fishers in New York, but Norman stayed in Chicago,
Yep.
right? But fast forward all these many, many years, and I would run into your uncle at different events in New York, and
Yeah.
that was a fun connection. But I hadn't seen your sisters, I don't think, since Florida. So we're talking
Mm.
the
Oh my gosh.
70s. And my mother and I were giving a talk at Sinai Temple for
Hmm.
Yom HaShoah. And you came on this before I knew who you were. And you came on with this very, very clever question. And I don't remember what the question was because I was too busy writing down, who is this kid? I want him as an intern on my team. I'm not kidding. And lo and behold, I get this text immediately after the event from your mom saying, "Oh my gosh, you know, here I am, and that's my son, and this is Sally's grandson." And I'm like, "What?"
Yep.
So here we are.
Yep.
Here
I
we are. And I
know.
think even later that night, that very same night, I think we wound up having like a 4 hour
Having a Zoom.
cocktail
Yeah.
party. Yeah, yeah. So
Yes. Yes.
Very, very fun. So now let's really talk about Teens Be Heard. So
Yeah.
clearly you have something going on that made me say, okay, I got to have this kid on my team. And you are the executive director of an organization called Teens Be Heard. Let's hear about it.
Hmm.
Tell me
Yeah.
what it is.
So Teens Be Heard was started actually, it's going to be a year anniversary, I think, on June 10th. Um, so our kind of origin story that I like to tell is right after the murder of George Floyd, there was this sort of uproar that I'm sure everyone experienced. And it was especially prominent on social media within the teen community. And there was a lot going on, and people were spewing hate, and there was a lot of quote unquote cancel culture going on.
Mhm.
And so our rabbi at Chicago Sinai Congregation, Rabbi Amanda Green, decided to have a sort of teen focus group to come together and kind of discuss current events and how we were feeling and how, how are we doing in this crazy time. And we kind of came to this conclusion that there's a major lack of communication within the teen community. And there's a lot of passion and a lot of drive to create action, but there's not a lot of follow through. And that's because there's not a lot of places that can actually foster that type of environment. And so I had been sitting on this idea of Teens Be Heard as kind of like an overarching teen organization for a while, and I felt like it was an appropriate time to bring it up.
Mhm.
And I mentioned it, and sort of throughout the summer, we refined this idea of what we wanted it to be. And now we are an established organization, and our mission is we really just want to create an involved and engaged and empowered teen community that is educated and that is willing to put in the work to make change surrounding social justice issues, whether it be issues of race, issues of LGBTQ plus representation, of religious freedom, of, any really human rights issue, you name it. We want to be sort of like that baseline, that catalyst, that place where teens can come and say, hey, I have an opinion and I want to share it. And
Mhm.
I want to explore this more. And we are sort of that organization that, whether it's somebody who has never been to a march, never done anything in their lives surrounding social justice, or it's another teen who also owns an organization or runs their own organization, we want to meet everyone where they are in their activism journeys and have a collaborative base where we can come together and talk about these issues freely, and also talk about how it plays into us being teens, because obviously most of us can't vote. I know I just turned 18 a few days after the election, so I wasn't able to vote.
Oh,
I know. But, it's really important to kind of figure out how can we start making change earlier than when we're adults, because these issues do affect us, but a lot of the time we're told like, oh, you don't worry about it later. You're not an adult yet. You're too young. But there's this like saying, I always sound like a broken record when I say it because I say it all the time, but this country in a way is kind of a broken record. So I'm going to keep saying it. But a lot of people say that children are the future or the youth are the future. But in reality, we're the present. We're here now. So why should we wait to make change until we're adults? Because by the time we're adults, those issues are just going to get worse if we leave them alone.
mhm.
And so that's really what TBH wants to emphasize and amplify, is that there's no point in procrastinating change. We can make change right now if we
Mhm.
just come together as this creative, empowered team base and pool our resources together and pool our knowledge together and have our voices heard, which is why it's called Teens Be Heard.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And is it something that you plan to continue after you leave for college?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting question. We are actually in a transition period right now.
Okay.
So I actually, in the coming weeks, will be stepping down as executive director,
Mhm.
because part of our mission is we've decided as a team that we want to keep this team led. And, we want to keep it relevant within who in this day and age are teens. And obviously, I just turned 18. I'm going off to college, and it would be a little ironic if I was in my 20s running an organization called Teens Be Heard. So we actually just have worked out our first transition, and it will be taking place in the coming weeks. And there will be many emails and posts about it that are coming up, but we really want to keep it authentic to what current teens are going through and experiencing. And even my experience as a senior in high school is different from my little brother's experience as a sophomore in high school,
Mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm.
my friend's sibling who is a freshman in high school or an eighth grader. And there's
Right.
still even those mini generational gaps between grade levels, even, which is kind of crazy because a lot of the time we're grouped into this one category. But I mean, the difference between me and some friends that I have that are freshmen is just like we just have completely opposite points of view sometimes. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important that the leadership in a student-led organization stays as like a student and teen-led organization. So I definitely still plan on doing activism work in college and for the rest of my life. And I obviously will always carry Teens Be Heard with me as, something that I started with this group of friends from my synagogue. But I definitely am going to be stepping off from this more hands-on role in the near future so that I can pass it on to people that are younger than me and see what they do with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think transition is healthy. It's healthy in
Mm-hmm.
any organization, and you're absolutely right that there are some very nuanced differences between a freshman and a sophomore and a junior, and
Mm-hmm.
even an eighth grader and a sophomore. You know, they're teens, and it's something that I love that you want the leadership to remain as teenagers, and at the same time, I'm sure you all are looking for some guidance sometimes when you're trying to really make something change effectively. Do
Mm-hmm.
you guys need funding, or is it funded through the synagogue, or how have you been getting your work out there?
Yeah. Currently we have kind of two resources. One of them is we've received a few donations through our website and through kind of our followers. And those funds are managed through the synagogue.
Great.
And
And so
then
that website is what,
just teensbeheard.org.
teensbeheard.org. You can make a donation. Go for it,
Yes.
audience.
Yes.
Everybody, make a donation.
And then we also just in the last year received a grant from Springboard through the Jewish United Fund. And so they have been funding our recent open mic nights that we've been doing, where teens come and share their pieces of activism, whether it be poems or essays or speeches or PowerPoints or videos. And it's a really amazing creative space where teens can come together and inspire each other and share each other's work.
Mm-hmm. Right. And sorry, I just got distracted there for a second. Uh,
That's okay.
a door was opening. I'm like, no, don't come in. We're live
I
on
know that
IGTV.
the working
Uh,
from home, the oh gosh, it's like chaos.
right. And so that's how you're getting your funding, and that's great. And I love that you're getting funding from JUF as well.
Hmm.
And that's excellent. So let's talk about what you guys did in these last 12 months. What kinds of
Hmm.
programs did you tell me more about the open mic, and tell me some of the changes that you feel like you've seen have happened.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with our kind of biggest, I guess, undertaking as like our first biggest undertaking. We started a campaign to sign teens up to be student election judges for the November presidential election. I was an election judge in the primaries as well as one of the other team members from TBH. And we absolutely loved it. And we thought it was a really important thing um, because the poll workers are quite literally the people who keep the polls open and make sure that people can come and vote.
Mm-hmm.
So we, in talking with the Chicago Board of Elections, found out that the organization that normally does the recruiting for student election judges wasn't actually doing that outreach this year. Um,
Wow.
because of COVID, because it was sort of a liability in a way for them and it was too complicated for them to get everything together. So TBH decided to kind of step in and help do our part. So we created a giant social media campaign and we sent emails to schools. And we were, we tasked ourselves with this undertaking of trying to get as many people to sign up as possible, because normally the people that sign up are seniors who kind of have a lot of time on their hands and want to go sit at the polls for a while, but they had not a lot of people sign up this year because of COVID, because
Sure.
obviously that's the at-risk population. So with combined efforts from us and the Chicago Board of Elections, and then a few other organizations that were also helping kind of gather teens, I think the number was like over 4,000 like applied. Um,
Fantastic.
and it's like a record number of student election judges from high schools that have ever applied to the Chicago Board of Elections to be poll workers. And as we saw, I mean, in the election, the Illinois elections went quite smoothly. Sadly, in other states there were some issues, but the Illinois elections really went smoothly. And it was really nice to be able to go out and, assure the voters that, the poll workers are here for you. We're trying to keep everyone safe. Um, and so that was really something where we really saw our impact, especially when we got that number back from the Chicago Board of Elections. We were like, wow, that's amazing. The amount of people that applied and signed up and were actually serving on election day and helping people cast their ballots, especially for this presidential election, which was so controversial and so important.
That's fantastic. That is wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about how you select which what's the word I'm thinking of? Like what is it that you want to put your focus and energy on? There are always so many things that have to do with social justice.
Yeah.
And you can't be everything to all causes, right?
Yeah.
How are you choosing? And what are you guys working on right now?
Yeah, so it's a good question, because we really obviously want to tackle everything, because who doesn't?
Right.
But we really do have to kind of look and see, what right now are teens concerned about. And that's kind of the big question that we try and answer. And by, talking with our followers and the members of our TBH community, and also looking at current events, kind of seeing, what is pressing right now and what can we do about it. And also, we don't try and do everything ourselves. For example, we've done some partnering with EcoCircle International, which is a teen-led climate change group. So we're not kind of going out and trying to like create our own climate change curriculum or anything like that. Sometimes if we want to do an event around climate change, or if we want to do like an interview around climate change, we'll ask them and we'll say, hey, can you write, our recent newsletter we just did, an Earth Day newsletter for April. And we actually got our friends over at EcoCircle to write part of our newsletter and write something about sustainability.
Wow.
Because rather than us trying to do it, we'll say, hey, let's amplify the voice of another teen organization. So a lot of it is kind of working with those partnerships and seeing in those ways, like trying not to like tackle all the issues ourselves as TBH. But then also we really want to focus on this umbrella of like, how can we get teens involved? And like more of this teen engagement aspect, like not on the specific issues, but more of like, how can we get involved in like any issue? So that's also like what we've been doing with our recent open mic nights. Is it's been doing a number of things. One, it's empowering teens, because the amount of people that have come up to me or texted me after the event and said, that was so amazing hearing from other people that are the same age as me, speaking on these topics and doing these amazing things. And it's really about empowerment. And that is like the first step to activism, is like empowering people and having people feel empowered. And I think that's something that people forget, is like activism doesn't have to be, going out and marching. It doesn't have to be making a huge statement. It can be something as little as like empowering one another, or lifting somebody up, or even calling someone out. And it can be these little steps that turn into, a momentous movement. And so that's a lot of what we wanted to do with the open mic nights, is, give a perspective of like, what do other teens care about? And then we can also use that information of like what teens are talking about in those open mic nights to then structure our next event. Like if 5 people come and talk about climate change, then we'll be like, okay, let's go to EcoCircle and plan a climate change event. So we can also gauge through that, like what teens are concerned and interested about.
Sure. And how can people participate in your open mic nights?
Yeah, so on our website or on our Instagram, which is just at Teens Be Heard, we are putting out announcements. The open mic nights happen every other month. Right now we're taking a summer break when we do our transition period.
Sure.
But they happen every other month, and there's a sign up link posted all over our website, all over our social medias. And you can go and sign up, and you can sign up either just to be an audience member and come and sit and watch, and you can ask questions, or you can sign up to be a speaker, and you can tell us what topic you want to cover and kind of what type of media you want to do, and then our team will work with you on how to kind of craft that into something that we will put into our program.
Sure, absolutely. So, speaking of questions, you guys that are tuned in here on IGTV today, thank you for showing up. That's awesome. Feel free to put questions in the comments, and I can ask those questions to Max for you. Of course, one of the things that my focus, my social justice issue that I've been working on doggedly for the last 3.5 years is Holocaust awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and condemning racism and condemning anti-Semitism. And it's very important to me that young people truly understand what is happening in the world right now, and how it's not something that can just be delayed in terms of combating.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that people feel as passionately about the environment. Again, another issue that we cannot delay anymore. The whistles have been blown, right,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. And certainly with what's happening right now and people's very, very uh, almost irrational responses to Israel and to the Hamas Israeli conflict that's happening right now, these are things that have to be addressed. And so the more that I can engage a younger generation, then I'll feel like I've succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
At my age and with what I'm doing with Would You Hide Me, I need to bust out of the echo chamber. And I'm curious to know, from your point of view and with teenagers, how aware are people? How aware are teenagers regarding Holocaust awareness? How aware are the educators that you're dealing with, that are teaching your classes? What's being taught in high school these days? You're in a public high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it's covered in most private schools. How is it being handled in public school?
I had it covered very briefly. It's interesting because the way kind of that, I guess, public high school in Chicago is structured is you kind of choose your own path of like classes to take. And so most of my Holocaust curriculum came from my world history class.
Mm-hmm.
But some people may have chosen not to take world history and took European history, which is more like Renaissance era. So I'm not sure if it actually covered the Holocaust. But it really, I think there are a lot of things, not just the Holocaust, also slavery, also, the history of indigenous people in this country. And that I think really needs to be incorporated into the civics, the civics electives or the civics requirements for schooling, not just public schools, but schooling across the board, across the world. And I think a lot of these things are kind of glossed over in these textbooks and by curriculum. And I'm thankful that the teachers I have had, or most of them, have been quite progressive and quite open, and they want to talk about these things, and they want to really emphasize. I took AP US history last year, and we read the 1619 project, and then we did a project on the history of police violence and police brutality in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And my AP US history teacher made a point to do that because she felt like the curriculum did not cover that, of the traditional advanced placement class.
Sure.
Whereas other people that I know, their teachers didn't necessarily go that in depth with it, and they more touched surface level. But I think it is something that we really need to kind of tear down and rebuild the curriculum of our history and our civics classes,
Mm-hmm.
because they have been written from this point of view that is so closed off from the reality of our world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the only way to move forward, is by educating yourself and by being educated by the proper resources, and not, frankly, whitewashed sources that are really centered around this kind of idea that America is a perfect country, and all of that sort of the almost illusion of the American dream, that, everyone is free in this country no matter what. And that's just not, sadly, not the reality. And I think it won't be the reality until we can really learn why it's not as free as we make it out to be.
Sure, sure. I understand. What do you think? You're in this unique position of being a teenager right now, and that is going to change. But since you are there, I can just ask you, as not just as a filmmaker, but as somebody who's truly trying to get a message across, what's the best way to make a message resonate with teens?
Yeah, that really is the question. And that's even a question that myself and the TBH team have been asking ourselves. Is it is really hard to communicate with teens. And it's very hard to do it intergenerationally also. And I think the main thing that we've found is kind of this personal connection. If teens can talk to other teens, that's really the best way to kind of get information across. I'm sure everyone, even when, you were younger, there's always like that thing that like your parents hear about it and then they're like, oh, you have to go to this. And then it becomes like that sort of like disgruntled,
Right.
But we found that like through us, it's been really effective. Like if we reach out personally as teens and say, hey, come to this event or come do this, whatever. So that's kind of like that communicational aspect. But I think in terms of intergenerational communication, it's really important to realize kind of that age doesn't equal experience.
Right. Right.
And I think that's the most important thing. Is we're so stuck on this idea that like teens are so stuck on like, we're not listening to our parents, we're not listening to our grandparents, we're like, oh, you stubborn old ones, but then I think there's also this aspect of like adults are hesitant to listen to teens because they don't want to take advice from someone younger than them, which is completely understandable. I mean, I'm like, my brother tells me things, I'm like, I'm not listening to you, but it's really important to kind of realize that although someone may have lived longer, although someone, it doesn't necessarily mean that like your experience is more valid or better or more enriched than a younger person. And I think everyone has different experiences. I mean, even sometimes I'll talk with my parents and they're more disconnected from social media because they are older and they choose kind of not to, interact with it as much. But I think I am more affected by a lot of the things happening within the social media world than they are. And so I have more experience in that than they do. And that's just an example of something that like, although yes, technically they have been around social media longer because they have lived longer than me, I am more ingrained in it with my, just the, like being a teen today. So I'm more affected by it. And I think you kind of have to walk this delicate tightrope of like, what things do I have more experience with? What things do I have less experience with? And what things do we just have different experiences with? But we can kind of come together and say, this is my experience, this is my experience, and just say, okay, I understand that, and come from really a place of empathy. That's what it's all about. And that's what activism is all about, is just having the empathy and the openness and the availability to be able to listen to what somebody else is saying, in this case, somebody younger or older than you, and say, you know what, I'm going to choose to listen to this and I'm going to choose to think about it and I'm going to choose to really take it in, even though there is an age gap. And I think that's just the important part of it.
Have you been running into challenges with adults listening to you? How has that been going?
It's been really positive, the reaction that we've received from adults. I think they're really interested to see that teens are kind of taking an initiative right now. And I think there's kind of, not just with TBH, but recently there's been this big uproar in activism and in, the world of social justice, and teens have really stepped up. And I think that adults are beginning to notice like, oh, like we actually should listen to younger people because we're leaving them with this world. And so I think the reaction has been really, the most of the time, if not all the time, positive, because it's a lot of what a lot of people have said to me is it's inspiring. And a lot of people said, have said to me, I wish I was this involved when I was your age. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the thing. Like, I would like to get to a point where no one has to say that as an adult. No one has to
Mm-hmm.
say, I wish I was as involved because it was too late. Like, I don't want it to be too late. I want everyone to be able to get involved, when they're young, so that when they're older, they can look back and say, I have no regrets. I have no, because I made change and I'm still continuing to make change. And it's easier once you get into the habit of making change, and once you get into the habit of like being an activist, it carries with you. It's not like, oh, I'm an adult now, so I'm just going to stop being an activist.
Right. I
It's
mean,
just, I got
also to
into it
be
earlier.
fair, the family that you've grown up in, your particular family, I mean, you were in the womb, you were taught to be an activist, I
Yeah.
think. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I mean, for context, both of my parents are public school teachers. So we are all about, like, my whole family is about education, communication, connections. And so I did come out of the womb an activist, really. And I really value education so much. And I value this notion that, like, everyone has the capability to change and to forge their own path. And so, I think the earlier that people realize that within themselves, the more power be.
Right, right. I mean, I look back when I was a teenager, I was not an activist as a teenager. I'm sure we had bake sales and car washes and stuff. I don't remember what they were for, but that's not the kind of family that I grew up in. And the very first time that I had the notion to become involved in something that truly, truly had nothing to do with my world point of view or reality was because of your grandma. When I moved to New York City, I was working with your grandma, and she was very involved with Northern Lights Alternatives. And this was it was an HIV/AIDS organization that supported people that were affected, who were getting ill, who were dying, and this was in the 80s. So things were in New York City rampant, crazy, out of control. And she actually trained me to become a counselor. So I would lead sessions for people that had AIDS and HIV, and just a counsel, just for us to sit around in a circle and talk, for people to have the opportunity to talk. So your grandmother, Sally Fisher, is responsible
Yes.
for me, always kind of having this, in my back pocket of, when is going to be the cause that's really going to light me on fire. And certainly at that time, it was wonderful to do, and I enjoyed it. But I did go on to get married, have kids, and get involved in all of their other things. And I can't say that it necessarily stayed with me, but the hunger and the longing to want to be engaged, to want to
Yeah.
be involved, absolutely did. And then, of course, your uncle is very active on a very public national level.
Yes.
So it's something that, as a former friend from long ago, I've watched and witnessed, and I'm like, good for you, Fish. Like, yes.
Yeah.
But then there comes a point when you can't just say good for you. You have to say, well, what am I doing? How can I be as effective in creating
Yes.
change as my childhood friend is, and is being, and certainly he had the platform and the voice to be able
Yes.
to do what he did, but and continuing to do, but it's still very inspiring.
Yeah.
And so just know that as a teenager, with what you're doing, you might become that grandpa to somebody else who didn't grow up
Yeah.
that way, and you help them. Or you might be that childhood friend who goes on, and somebody's just kind of watching from afar, and you run into them at a gala here and there, and it's like, oh, good to see
Yeah.
you. But honestly, it's an inspiration, and it's something that has moved me forward in my life. So this is kudos to the Fisher
Thank
family
you.
and the Silverman family, of
Yes.
course, definitely. So I think let's just continue the conversation. I want to invite you to be one of our test screeners for Would You Hide Me? And we'll be
Yeah.
having a test screening in June again,
Oh,
because
perfect.
it's time for us to, I've been primarily dealing with only professional filmmakers, to give us the notes and everything. But now the film is at a point where we are ready to start to really open it up to a broader audience. And I certainly think that everyone in the Fisher and Silverman family would be dynamite to have you guys as test screeners, but
Yes, yes.
especially because of what you're doing with Teens Be Heard, and would love to get some teen voices giving us commentary, give us notes. We want it.
Yeah.
We want the constructive criticism right now. So that would be great. Do you have any questions for me?
Hmm. I think my one question, kind of similar to what you asked me, is like, what how do you go about speaking to teens or people younger than you, and how do you find yourself connecting with that audience, especially with something like Would You Hide Me? It's so um deep and emotional, and it's a really hard kind of thing to process. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you kind of connect to a younger audience on that level?
Sure. I mean, I think that I have the gift of having three children of my own. Yes, they're all adults in their 20s now, and they're all launched and all that kind of thing, but it's not so far away. But the real bonus that I think has been helpful to me in terms of trying to be able to speak to younger people is that when I was taking my kids around to look at college campuses to see where they wanted to apply to school, I would walk onto these campuses and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all these facilities, and look at these film schools, and look at these theater schools, and this is fantastic. This is where all the money is. And the nonprofit theater world, it's rough. It's a rough world. And I just chose to go to my kids' football games and soccer games instead of doing 99 seat theater, which I applaud. I love 99 seat theater, but for me, I couldn't do it over and over and over again. And so I put myself back into grad school in my 50s. And being the only person in their 50s when you're in a class of everyone in their 20s and all the other people around you, I'm on the one hand relating more to all the professors, because my goal in going back to grad school was I want to come out and I want to be a professor. I love young people. I always want to be around young people, but I love very dedicated young people. And so that's what's very inspiring to me, is when somebody really knows what their calling is, knows what their passion is. And I just enjoy continuing that conversation and empowering them. And it just turned out that I don't really have time to be a professor right now because I'm making this movie.
Yes.
So I think that's one answer to your question. Part B to the answer to your question is that our film is, someone could certainly put it into the historical category if they wanted to. Someone could put it into the Holocaust category if they wanted to, or Jewish films if they wanted to. But at the end of the day, that's really not what the film is. The film is it's a road trip movie, number one. Who doesn't love a road trip? And we're making a very specific choice in our storytelling and in the visual components of how we're telling the story, that sure, you have to have a little bit of Holocaust history in there, especially if we want the film to become a teaching tool. Obviously, there'll be companion curriculum along with it, but the visual storytelling that we are doing, and I won't say too much about what that is, I think will absolutely make our film unique in the canon of Holocaust films, or films that the genesis
Yes.
is of the Holocaust. Because at the end of the day, our message is exactly what you said earlier in the program. It doesn't have to be the grand gesture, and not a gesture, but the grand action of hiding 7 children for 2 years. Who does that? Well,
Yeah.
thank God 2 people did that, or I
Yes.
wouldn't be here talking to you, right? But it's the micro things that do make a difference. And all of those micro things, in addition to the incredible Schmidt family who hid my mother and her siblings, but all those other little things, one of those tiny little things could have gone wrong. Just one. And again, I wouldn't be here talking to you. So it's that piece, I think, that is the most important takeaway for us. And we want to make sure that message isn't hammered over the head, but that it's felt, that it's experienced in the viewer, and that they find themselves engaged because they're actually physically experiencing it. I think that when it comes to activism, we are just strengthening the muscle.
Hmm.
Everybody has it, but we just want to strengthen the muscle and giving people the opportunity to strengthen the muscle. So it's wonderful what you're doing with Teens Be Heard, that, you know, many people either go to their church or their mosque or their synagogue and they can become engaged with social action. It gives, it gives people the opportunity to do it in that's under an umbrella organization. And,
Hmm.
you know, you're not bearing the burden all by yourself on your own shoulders. And the same thing with schools. You know, every school has clubs and,
Hmm.
and things like that. So I hope that as we continue to move forward, right now we're so engrossed in the film actually. But that's why I started to do IGTV. It's why I'm doing Banter with Beth and not on Facebook. I'm doing it
Yeah.
on IGTV. So you guys, please like us, subscribe to us, you know, help us stay alive on Instagram. Um, we do need the help. We need the support. Share, put us on your stories and stuff like that. And if you weren't able to watch the whole program right now, it will be on Instagram, but then it will be on our YouTube channel at Beth Lane Film. And so that's what we're trying to do in order to stay engaged with the younger generation. We want to bust out of the echo chamber. Of
Hmm.
course, we want to be supported and engaged with the entire Jewish community, upward of 50 years old and everything. That's clearly our sweet spot, but that is our echo chamber.
Hmm.
So I want to talk to students, younger people who are so progressive that they don't understand why Israel has an Iron Dome. You know, it's so complicated. It's terribly complicated. And so there needs to be civil discourse about really
Hmm.
understanding what's going on, because I'm very concerned about the finger pointing that's happening right now, because people they have to take into account the decades of this
Hmm.
history here and what's going on. So I applaud you for what you're doing. Everybody, please go to teensbeheard.org
Yes.
and you can support the work that Max has started, and he's passing the baton so beautifully. That's wonderful. And please, please stay in touch.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Give my love to your family, and I'll be in Chicago in July. We'll all get together.
Yes, I'll see you then. All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Have a great day. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in next week. We have on Banter with Beth, we have, let me see, June. Who do we have? We have Dr. Shay Pilnick from Yeshiva University in New York City. I think he's going to be a fantastic conversation. Please tune in for that. Please go visit wouldyohideme.com and check out our YouTube channel. Check out our Instagram here. Send us suggestions, your ideas, all of it. We welcome it. We love it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.